me and Homer Jones and Big John Talley had a big crap game going back in the alley. And I kept rolling them 7 and winning all them pots. My luck was so good I could do no wrong. I just kept on.
Hi, and welcome back to White Fox Vintage Snowmobile. I'm Al Pinkney. This will be part 5 of our series on the CB750SC Nighthawk. We're just going to put the engine back together primarily and put it in the frame. I don't know if this will be the last one in the series. I got quite a bit of footage, so if you're bored with it, just fast forward through or skip to the next one. But we're making good progress, and I hope you enjoy. So here is approximately 22. Here's 24. There. And then the manual says make sure it turns over, which makes sense. Now the only thing about this is the chains always tend to grab on things. Without pinching your fingers. Well, the pistons are dry. I haven't lubed those, so that is going to give us some resistance. I guess we could drop a little oil in those cylinders. So it seems to work. So we've slipped the starter drive clutch in place. It just lays down in there, and we're just in the process of bolting the alternator chain tensioner slipper side into place. According to the manual, this is a bit of a juggle at this point. Infinite ratchet my ass. We're not quite sure how that's supposed to work. So we've had a bit of a time with the alternator starter clutch drive. And what I'm finding is that the manual suggests you put the chain tensioner on and push the locking pin back and it locks, but it's not locking. I think the slipper is worn to the point that it won't lock. So I took a fine round file and sharpened that edge, and it holds, but it wants to slip all the time when I'm putting the alternator in. into the alternator shaft in. So we've got a pair of vice grips on there holding it. There's a little bit of Zen Buddhist meditation going on here to get all this to work, but the little sprocket that the alternator chain drives goes in first, and then the starter clutch, and there's the one-way gear, and by wiggling and praying it goes together. So we're just in the process of tightening up the nut that holds it all together, which is a bit of a devil of a place to get at, and we can only do 1/16 of a turn at a time, and it's more than a person can do with his fingers, so patience. Now I hope the fact that that slipper doesn't quite hold is not going to be a real issue. I don't like that. But in order to file it out so it would really hold, I think the hole would be so big it might be out of spec anyway. So there we're snug to the point that we'll have to get a holder on the alternator and tighten it up. Our next step would be to sort of inspect the transmission gears in the output shaft, make sure everything's clean, and drop that into the crankcase. Don't anticipate any issues here, but we'll take a look. There is a half ring to locate that bearing on behind the clutch, so I believe that is in the other case already from the donor motor, but we'll make sure. This transmission only has 14,000 kilometers on it, so I don't anticipate any real banged up dogs or anything. And the clutch drove like it was new at the time, so I think we'll be all right here. We'll lubricate things and should run like new. I think masking tape gets stronger when it's got oil on it. I never seem to have that much luck taping things up with it. But taking it off seems difficult. As you saw in a previous video, I had not bought a new gasket for that output shaft. We won't make that mistake again. So I'm not seeing any problems. I think this will go together. We'll scrape the old gasket. There's an O-ring here we want to watch out for. that dropped in nice. Now my friend Wayne at the local Honda dealership brought me in this gasket. It's perfect. And that is the same part number between the 750s and the 700s, which sort of makes sense. Problem I'm a little worried about is that gasket skating around in assembly and possibly getting pinched or buggered up. So I'm just going to put a little gasket adhesive on there to hold that in place. We don't want to overdo this part because a future mechanic will curse my you-know-what when he comes to scrape that gunk off. And we got to watch this oil passage in here. There we go. Bottom half of the crankcase, previous owner used a lot of orange silicone where it shouldn't have been, and it's terribly dirty inside, so we're going to have to spend some time in the solvent bath with that piece. So we won't bore you with the details. We'll clean that up real nice, blow some air through the passages and so forth. Okay, our lower crankcase half has all been flushed and blown through. We took some things apart and blew air through and solvent, fixed the oil pressure sender switch, and cleaned all the gasket surfaces. So I guess our next step is to reinstall the output shaft. The whole thing makes me a little nervous. I think this bushing on the left has to line up. There's some marks that locate the dowel pin that sticks out. So that I think will drop into place. But I am worried about the final drive gasket. There's not a lot of clearance, which is why I attempted to glue it in the first place, but possibly we can get one screw through there, which would help. It is a bit of a leap of faith, isn't it? Now if the gods are with us, we'll drop the bottom crankcase half onto the top and try to get the shift forks lined up. Okay, after a little fiddling and cursing, we did get the case to drop on, and the shift forks all seem to be in their grooves. So what we're doing now is we've got a pair of vice grip pliers on the shifter shaft, and we're just turning the motor over slow but sure, and lo and behold, we've got neutral. And I think if we go this way once, we get low, and this way half a click we get neutral again, and then we can shift up through the gears. So we're cautiously optimistic that the whirlies and the gears will go around the way they're supposed to. It is a nice crankcase to click together. So now it's a matter of finding all the right size bolts. We've got two engines apart here, and I don't know which set to use. And torque the bottom of the crankcase. We put 3-bond or 3-bond crankcase sealer on the halves, so we're anxious to get that torqued so it cures properly. We don't have any oil leaks. And I really do have to put some tools away one of these days. I found that the engine sitting this way did not allow me to get the forks to drop over the main shaft and the counter shaft. Only when I raised it up so it's perfectly flat, then the forks tend to fall down and click in. So maybe that's a hint that'll help somebody. Output shaft gasket seems to be happy, so we'll see if we can't torque some bolts here. Now the time has come to start tightening the bolts in the crankcase, and our assistant Gracie come out to, because I don't really know how to count. So 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the 8mm bolts. 5. We're not torquing these, we're just tightening them a bit. 6. 7. 8. 9. The bolts were all buffed with the wire wheel and oiled. So now we move to the 6mm bolts. 11 is in under the oil pressure switch. Okay. 12. 13. 8mm bolt. Nope. Nope. Right there. 14. 23. Oops. 24. Tut, tut, tut. I'm gonna live dangerously. Whoops. What's the matter, honey? Can't you talk? There. That engine would probably run now. We are now at the final torque. We're going 17 foot-pounds. And that's it from the bottom. There's 4 from the top as well. Get them later. There. Thanks, honey. So we gave the bottom of the engine a little coat of semi-gloss black paint and flipped it over. Worked on the alternator a little bit. Put on this oil line that goes down underneath. It's hard to get on through after once it's in the frame, as I recall. So we're to the point of doing a little cleanup in the shop, and then we can possibly wrestle this into the frame. And I won't put any extra equipment on it just to make it a little lighter, a little easier for 1 or 2 people to wrestle in. So we will think about the next step. So after some wiggling and farting around, we got the engine block into the frame. Motor mounts all lined up. It is just a matter of getting the motor mounts in. There. The worst was getting the U-joint to swing straight and pop into the output shaft, or over the output shaft, I should say. So now it's a matter of working on the parts table till you run out of pieces, or almost, and then we'll see if we can make this thing start. It's getting a little late in the day, but we'll put in a couple more hours and see what we can get done. On further examination of this engine block, I noticed that this bottom ear on the clutch cover is broken. There should be enough meat there to make it seal. We do have a gasket to go on, but we'll use some black silicone as well, just to make sure. As well, where the crankcase halves meet up, there's a bit of a lip there on that back side. I don't understand that, but we'll use a little silicone there as well. Trouble everywhere we turn. Okay. What the hell's going on now? Imagine it's a case of somebody put some sealer in there at one time or another, thinking that it would leak through the bolts. do have my 6mm tap here, so we'll maybe run the tap through some of these holes. I'm amazed at the amount of swarth that's in those holes. A work of art. Now I'll have to explain to my Harley driving buddies why there's a bolt missing from there. We'll come up with some bullshit story. I've spared you some of the boring details, but what we've done, the engine is back in the frame, so we installed the little oil line that runs from the front of the angle drive to the angle drive itself. The clutch slave cylinder is installed. A few more bolts down in here. The pulsar coils are the pickups that talk to the CDI box, which gives you the spark. And I've just put the alternator back together. So nothing new there. You've seen that on previous videos. We'll probably put the bellows on for the shaft drive and the shifter while we're down in this area. And we'll stand back, take a look. We'll probably drop the cylinder head on and torque it and start working on the very complex cam timing.